Got a new project in the shop today, and it's probably a project I should have done a year ago. So I'm located in Iowa, and our deer season just got finished up. So Iowa is a straight wall rifle cartridge state, meaning anything above 35 cal is legal to harvest deer with. Now, I'm not a legislative expert, but the law kind of transitioned from shotgun slugs or slug guns into having more precise, better controlled rounds. So it was a great change. I was really happy when that law came out, but it has since gone from straight wall cartridges to anything above 35 cal. So that opens us up into a whole lot of options that using bottleneck cartridges, they can perform closely to the guns that we use for varmint rounds. So this is my Coyote gun. It's a 6mm Creedmoor. Really happy with the setup. And when I go from shooting this, which is extremely fast, flat shooting, good performance, to shooting something in the straight wall range like 350 Legend or 450, it's not that those are bad cartridges. It's just that they behave a lot differently. You know, their trajectory inside of 200 is pretty good, and as soon as you get outside of that, it behaves a lot different, drops a lot more. So my goal with this project is to use a bottleneck cartridge that fits into the Iowa straight wall, or 35 cal law, but we're going to be doing it in just a more modern cartridge without subjecting ourselves to a whole lot of recoil. So a lot of cartridges over that 35 cal are just flat out big. They're long action, really heavy bullets, and you might have to either have a dedicated gun, so a long action rifle, which means different magazines, just a different gun that you're not familiar with. So this particular one is going to be chambered in 375 Raptor, and that's going to let me use the gun that I'm familiar with and use frequently for coyotes and target shooting, and use the same magazines, same bolt face, same everything. I'm just swapping out my barrel. So pretty excited to get this video out and start this project and see if this is going to be a viable cartridge that I can take out deer hunting. So just finished up turning the tenon, or the threaded shank, on the barrel for the American Rifle Company Action. That's a 1 1/16 by 20 thread. Those turned out really nice. And instead of a counterbore like a Remington 700 or just a flush fit like a Savage, this has a conical breech, and that is for clearance on the bolt face. So it's important that you have to put that breech relief for the bolt face on before you do any of your chamber reaming, because if you don't have that, what happens is when you go to check your headspace, you'll get a false reading because your bolt will bottom out on the barrel instead of having the gauge in the chamber where it needs to be. So you'll be wondering why you're not getting to headspace, and then you'll realize it's because your bolt hit the barrel and your chamber is way too deep. So the next step, we'll get the reamer here in the machine for the chamber, make sure it's running true, and we'll get this chambered. So I've got the coolant turned on going through the bore. I've got a rotary adapter I made that fits in the spindle and goes onto the muzzle end. And then we've got the reamer all dialed in. Indicators are running 0, so no taper on the holder this way, up and down, or concentricity. Got a nice little tool that I can hold onto the barrel, and then I go on the bushing here for the pilot, and back on the shank so I can see if there's any taper just by rotating this around, and check the concentricity all at the same time. So we'll get this thing chambered here. So you can see I've got the action threaded on now after I've chambered almost to depth. I have the gauge in the action. So with a little bit of a gap, I can close the bolt. And then when I screw this on, it's gonna push the gauge into the depth of that reamed hole. So this is probably hard to see on camera, but there's just a little air gap between the action and the barrel. So I measure that gap with feeler gauges. There you can see it kind of. I measure that with feeler gauges, and then I know that that's my minimum depth I need to go before this all fits together. So because of SAMI specs, usually it ends up being about 3 thou past touching. So that gives 1 thou of, some people call it crush, but as you tighten the action onto the barrel to torque spec, you do lose just a little bit of clearance there, and that gives you 2 thou of extra headspace. So that seems to be pretty good fit for a custom gun. If you're doing a pre-fit, you need more than that, but this is looking in good shape. I'll get that measured and we'll ream to final depth. So here I've got the action tight to the barrel. That shoulder is tight there. Gauge is in the chamber, and you can see I've got a piece of tape on the back of the gauge. So tape is about 3 thou thick, and action does not close. It just barely starts there, doesn't close. So try to do this one-handed without dropping my gauge. You can see if I take that tape off the back, tape's off. Like nothing. So that is chambered and headspace is good. This barrel has just finished being chambered, and I switched my setup a little bit. Took the barrel out, took the coolant adapter off the muzzle end, and now we have the chambered end back up by the chuck. So this is an adapter that I've got. It's got the action threads for the barrel. I use this for, you know, whatever 1/16 and 20 threads per inch barrels that I'm doing. And this is turned concentric on the outside at the same time that I made those threads, but I do not indicate off of this piece. This is just so that I can hold the barrel. So I thread the barrel in tight to this piece, and then I indicate off of the actual shank. So that's the surface that we cut on the outside at the same time we did the chamber. So those two should be as concentric as the machine can make them. So I've got the indicator touching the tenon there on the barrel, and that's a 1/10,000th inch indicator, and we just got a little bit of needle wiggle there. So that's dialed in, and then we're supporting the muzzle end here with the tailstock. So this setup is just to profile the barrel. So we'll get the shape or contour of what we want on the outside of the barrel, and this is not even the final step. After we contour it, then I need to slide this whole thing back into the chuck, and that's when I'll put the muzzle crown on. So the crown's pretty important because it's the last thing the bullet touches, so you can't have any imperfections. And when we support this so that we can cut the outside, we have to push the live center into the muzzle, and that creates just a little bit of a burr. It'll push the metal. So that's why this isn't the last operation. After this is done, we'll slide it back, dial it all back in with axial and radial adjustment, put the crown on, and then that barrel will be good to go. So let's get this thing cutting. So I've got to do a shameless plug for my own product here. I make these barrel vices that you can hold in a bench vise or just bench mount them. And sometimes when I use these threaded adapters to hold them in the truck, they get a little tight, so I can't get them loose by hand. So I just put a barrel vise on here, give it a little tap with a mallet, and then I can unthread it. So we've got the muzzle end of the barrel here dialed in. I didn't show the axial adjustment being dialed in, but that's taken care of. I wanted to show you guys, this barrel isn't really bad, but it's kind of showing a little bit of ratchet. So depending on the profile of the rifling, you know, we like to see where it's bore and then land and then bore. But you can see here how it only reaches 0 for a really small period of time. So that just means that it's more like a valley than a flat bottom on that bore. And that's fine, it just makes it a little bit trickier to dial in. So you can see it will swing to 0, but it's just a little bit trickier to find. So we'll get this crown cut and this barrel will be done. So there you have it. We've got this barrel finished up. Got a nice recessed crown on it. It'll lead in on the threads. And this barrel is shorter, it's 18 inches, but it's got a pretty hefty contour. So it might get some fluting or dimpling. That'll probably be a separate video, but we can do a little sneak peek. Might do something like this. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody.